He's here.
He's the Zach Bagans of his day.
Yes.
And he's here.
This guy is here to ruffle some feathers, peacock around, two sort of feather metaphors I'm using.
I'm here now.
Hello, welcome to Guides the Unknown. I'm Kristen.
And I'm her little brother, William.
And this week we are taking a closer look at vampires, a subject that we have touched on here and there, talking Dracula, talking probably a movie that's got a vampire. Certainly talked Twilight on Patreon.
Oh yeah, we definitely have talked Twilight before, yeah. Oh yeah.
But we haven't really just done a holistic all-around look at the vampire.
Which is surprising. It's always delightful when there's a realization that like there's just like some big iconic horror figure that we somehow haven't touched on.
Right.
How long? Almost 7 years in.
Yeah.
Outstanding.
I know.
Delighted.
We've been remiss. So, Will, I think you are going to give us kind of like a general overview, right, of the history of Vampire?
I wouldn't even say it's a general overview. I would say that what I've got is hard-hitting research going back to the origin of the vampire, trying to understand where this folklore came from.
Great.
What were some of the major cases that brought vampires up to its like big evil villain status that we knew it as. And then I basically hand off once it becomes like pop culture, garbage, which is what you'll be talking about.
No, it's not. I will be talking about the Highgate Vampire, which was suggested to us by Jezebeth.
Oh, it sounds like you, interesting.
What?
I don't know, it's a little horseshit. You told me last week we agreed you'd be covering pop culture.
No, we didn't.
Well,
I was going to be covering, roll the tape, Jezebeth in our chat suggested the Highgate Vampire, and I said, I'll cover that.
You sound so confident. I'm afraid to roll back the tape.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I should not roll back the tape.
I suggest you don't.
We got to get the origin of vampires, the folkloric history of vampires.
Okay, yeah. You do all that. I would like to do the Highgate Vampire that Jezebeth suggested.
Oh, okay.
So I will be covering the story of the Highgate Vampire, which is so awesome.
Okay.
A new Guides to the Unknown classic, at least in my mind.
Really?
Something I've never heard of before and am instantly in love with.
Oh, delightful. All right, well, now I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah.
Now I like you again.
Okay, good.
All right, everybody.
We're cool.
Now, if anybody's watching the video version, which has been glitching out lately as my equipment slowly dies, you will note that neither one of us is wearing a red Kevlar scarf around our necks.
We're really taking a risk here.
We had covered a show called The Real Vampire Hunters in America, I believe it was called.
Yeah, something like
This is
that.
back in episode 227, and that was a show that purported to literally be its title, that these guys were actually hunting vampires like today, contemporary vampire hunters. And one of them was very notable for the red neckerchief he wore, which he said was Kevlar and would prevent a vampire bite.
So awesome.
Do you feel exposed as we discuss the vampire that neither one of us has adequate neck protection?
I feel safe because we're in the basement over here at your house, but were I to be out and about in the world, I'd want to grab that neckerchief.
Okay, well, you better...
What about you? How are you feeling?
Bewildered?
Yeah.
Horrified?
Betrayed?
I am afraid that the second I step outside the house, I will be met upon.
Yeah.
Is it a phrase? I'll be pounced upon by vampires who are watching live probably right now and just waiting to kill us because we're letting all their secrets out.
Yeah, we are basically calling to the vampire by doing this.
We are, and I'm afraid to call to the vampire. But we're going to get into all of that, the origin of the vampire, some strange cases, the Highgate Vampire. After this commercial break.
Okay, William, now that we're cool again, now that you ate your words, now that you know that you're a total idiot, now that people in our live chat, because we record live, have supported me and said that indeed I am correct and you are wrong, why don't you go ahead and do your cute little portion of what we do?
Well, thank you for not laying it on thick. I can't believe I forgot that. We have to cover like good like vampire pop culture in the future.
There's plenty of it. We could do a whole episode just that.
I was worried that my research would be a whole show, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I'm not worried about it whatsoever. So I want to cover like the vampire and where it came from and stuff a little bit. And then I've got some strange cases. I think by and large, everybody knows what a vampire is, right? But we know what it is today.
Yeah.
We know like the conventional thinking of like, vampires and undead so-and-so probably was bitten by a previous vampire. It's almost like zombies, right? Like you bite someone and you transfer the vampirism to them.
Right.
And now you require blood to survive. So you got to suck blood out of future victims.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're said to be able to like turn into a bat, all that kind of stuff, killed by daylight. But why?
Right.
Where did this actually begin? Is there any sort of origin that you can even point to in the first place? And I really enjoyed, specifically on Wikipedia, who can often be like very dry or unreliable or whatever. But in this case, I felt like they actually, whoever wrote the vampire page on Wikipedia, they were like dining. They were eating fresh.
Maybe it was a vampire.
It might have
Maybe
been.
they were like, I want this documented correctly.
It could have been a modern vampire.
Yeah.
I really loved how this was written. A vampire is a mythical creature that subsists by feeding on the vital essence, generally the form of blood, of the living. In European folklore, vampires are undead humanoid creatures that often visit loved ones and cause mischief or deaths in the neighborhoods which they inhabited while they were alive. All makes sense.
Yeah.
Still feels compatible with our understanding of vampires in general.
Right.
But listen to this. They wore shrouds and were often described as bloated and of a ruddy or dark countenance, markedly different from today's gaunt, pale vampire. So they were said to be, like, basically, literally, like, imagine that you suck so much blood.
Yeah.
That your body bloats
You're
up with
bloated
blood.
like a tick.
Yeah, you're bloated like a tick.
Yeah.
Ew.
I know.
When you say it like that, ew.
I know, it's disgusting.
But yes, and that is very different. So there is a lot that I'm going to be covering that, like, some of it supports the way that we think about vampires today, and some of it is distinctly different, which is very, very fun to me. But I'm always sort of curious about like where words come from.
Yeah.
And so the word vampire itself, there's a whole etymology of the term that is messy, 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 because vampire in general is believed like it might come from a misinterpretation of this word from this culture. It could come from over here or from over there. And it goes on and on and on and on and on. But this was cool. So, trying to find like a fun one was like finding a needle in a haystack.
Yeah.
Check this out. In Albanian, the words lugat or luvgat and dampir are used to describe a vampire type creature. And the latter, dampir, seems to be derived from the words dam, meaning tooth, and pir, which is to drink.
Oh, perfect.
So it's drinking with your teeth.
Yeah.
Puncture the neck, drink with your teeth.
Yeah. I think at one point when I was a kid, I thought that they were literally drinking with their teeth. I thought that there was some sort of like straw mechanism happening in the tooth.
Oh, interesting. Now that you say that, I do feel decently confident that there is a depiction of vampires somewhere where the teeth, the fangs really are sort of like a hypodermic needle.
Right.
Like it can like suck in through those fangs.
I know. I kind of think so too.
That rings a big bell, but I couldn't tell you from where.
I know.
So actually, while I think about it, if anybody out there happens to know what that is, feel free to send it in or at GTTUpod or gttupod@gmail.com because that rings a bell. So how about the origin itself? Supposedly, there are vampiric type creatures that stretch back to ancient times. We're talking ancient Mesopotamia. We're talking ancient Greece. There are Babylonian and Assyrian tales of the mythical Lilitu.
Oh,
The Lilitu,
that sounds nice.
which seems to have given rise to the figure of Lilith. And I believe you know Lilith, right? She was said to be the first wife of Adam.
Yeah.
He of Adam and Eve fame.
Of course.
The original man, which would make Lilith the original woman, and she fell away and was later considered a demon, said to have subsisted on the blood of babies.
Right. She bad girl.
So maybe Lilith was like an original vampire figure. And of course, there's the Romanian Strigoi.
Of course.
Dracula himself is said to perhaps be an interpretation of the legend of the Strigoi.
Now, what of Lasky and Strigoi?
I know. I want to know more about Lasky and Strigoi, which I can read better and faster than English.
This is the
Lasky and Strigoi.
what would you call it? A language?
I would call it a language.
Yeah, but it's a written-only language that Bam Margera made.
Yes, Bam Margera wrote his own language and insists that he can read it
and write
it,
more easily, more quickly than English.
which is surprising because it takes way more lines.
Yeah. No, it's very complicated.
Anyway, so there are all kinds of blood-sucking baddies throughout history. People even point to the Chupacabra as basically being a vampire-type figure.
Yeah.
The goat sucker himself.
Yeah.
But the most commonly accepted direct origin of how we think about vampires today, like just blood-sucking people whose vampirism can be transferred from one person to another, that all seems to come from southeastern Europe in the 1700s. Now, they point out that in the early 18th century, the 1700s, was when verbal traditions of many groups in the region were recorded and published.
Okay.
So that makes a ton of sense that like this is one of the first times that local folklore is being written down and kept for posterity. And it makes me wonder how many different kinds of creatures and weird oddity things have existed that no one wrote down. And
That's
so they're
totally
just
true.
lost to time.
Right.
Which I love that sort of thing.
Yeah, it is really cool.
So once again, vampires at this time in the 1700s were usually considered to be bloated in appearance, ruddy or purplish. So far, it's sounding like someone's holding a mirror up to myself. Dark in color. And these characteristics were often attributed to the recent drinking of blood, which was supposedly seen when they would exhume some of these bodies from the ground, seen seeping from the mouth and nose of a body in a coffin.
Yeah.
And it was also said that they would wear their shroud in there, but their left eye was usually open, which is strange to me.
Wonder why. Just taking a peek.
I know. So the body in the coffin or however they used to bury would be clad in linen, and that its teeth, hair, and nails have grown while in the coffin, which made people think that, you know, the body was essentially still alive in there.
Right.
If the nails are growing, but the person's dead, how's that possible?
Right.
And then that's where we get into sort of like our contemporary knowledge of, like, I guess they say that the hair and nails do grow slightly after your death. But also I've heard that, like, when you die, as your body dries or whatever, your skin recedes from your fingertips and makes it look like your nails have grown.
I've heard that too. I think it's more that.
That's,
if I remember right.
I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but there are all of the vampire origin stuff here in the 1700s in Europe is like frequently said to be a lot of fear, a lot of illness, and a lot of misunderstanding the decomposition of bodies.
I mean, that makes sense.
So if you're looking for some reason to blame why people keep dying of sicknesses and illness, why your oxen keep being found killed or dead, and you go, well, there could be this villain thing that I've heard. Let's dig up a body.
Yeah.
And then you look at the body and you go, whoa, the body looks weird.
Right. There must be a connection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't understand the science, the natural effect of a body decomposing in the ground.
Yeah.
Which makes a ton of sense.
Perfectly understandable.
Logic of the that's the weird thing is,
you
like,
can only know what you know.
saying it's a vampire is illogical, but looking at a body and going, whoa, something's going on with that body, and trying to figure out why, that's a logical process coming to the wrong conclusion.
Totally.
You know? So there was a whole panic in the 1700s. It's like a vampire panic. All right. So there were epidemics in Eastern Europe around 1732. There's a whole political thing going on too, which I'm not really going to get into. I'm more interested in, like,
why not?
I wonder why.
Explain.
For a variety of reasons, one of which is,
No, don't.
Austria gained control of northern Serbia and Oltenia
stop.
with the Treaty of
The same way that light is to the
Passarovitz.
vampire,
I know.
this complicated 1700s Eastern European politics is to me.
Treaties, and I just can't, my brain is incompatible with some of this data. Get back to the vampires,
No,
my brain
shriveling.
says.
Yeah.
So it was noted in 1718 that there was a local practice of exhuming bodies and, quote, killing vampires.
Oh my God.
That's like official record. We had to kill the vampires, you know?
Man.
So the panic began with an outbreak of alleged vampire attacks in eastern Prussia from 1725 to 1734.
Did you say vampire tax?
Yeah.
Tax? T-A-X?
Attacks.
A tax. Okay.
You have to pay your vampire tax.
We're talking about politics.
I mean,
taxes occurred. Okay, yeah,
taxes.
Yeah.
Talk about the tax man. Talk about a bloodsucker.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Yes. Okay. Vampire attacks.
Attacks.
Yes.
Yeah. So the first and most infamous vampire case involved the corpse of Peter Blagojevich from Serbia.
Okay.
And this is where I need to really shout out our listener Matthew Deegan, who sent me information here.
Cool.
Peter Blagojevich lived in a village called Kisalova. He died in 1725, and after his death, there was an increase in other deaths in the village, and this was like within 24 hours each. I know, you just got to imagine, like, it's hard to imagine this as a real time and a real place, but one person dies, and then all of a sudden, every day somebody else dies. And you're trying to figure out what is going on.
Panic.
Within 8 days, 9 people had perished. On their deathbeds, the victims allegedly claimed to have been throttled by Peter Blagojevich.
Oh my God.
Who had been dead for a week.
Oh my God, yeah.
Oh my God. Furthermore, Blagojevich's wife stated that he had visited her and asked her for his shoes.
Okay.
May I have my shoes?
Yeah, well, I mean, if he's running around the village bludgeoning people, he's going to need to protect his tootsies.
Yeah, you're right. She then moved to another village for safety reasons. In another legend, it is said that Blagojevich came back to his house demanding food from his son. The son refused. I don't know why.
Ouch.
No, Dad.
Yeah.
Get out of here. Blagojevich brutally murdered him. And then this was confusing to me. Probably via biting and drinking his blood. What's probably doing in here?
Yeah, seriously.
What's the word probably doing in this little report?
Well, look, this happened a long time ago.
1700s. Yeah, we're talking a long time ago, 300 years ago.
This is a very long game of telephone.
Probably via drinking his blood, right? Gotta be. The villagers decided to disinter the body of Peter Blagojevich and examine it for signs of vampirism, such as growing hair, beard, nails, and the absence of decomposition. So, they dig up the body, they find that his hair and beard had grown, that there was new skin and nails growing on his hands, which seems to have been
What does that mean?
It's a misunderstanding of, like, I think I read something where it was like, and a lot of this is literally about decomposition, which is gnarly, right? But it's like, as you decompose, your nails are going to fall off.
Yeah.
All right?
Oh.
And then you're going to see the starts of a new nail bed underneath or something like that. So people took that as like, he's alive, new matter is growing on this dude. Yeah.
Right. But new skin?
And blood could be seen in his mouth.
Oh.
That's far more concerning.
Why are you peeking?
Exactly.
I'm concerned about that.
Who's peeking in the mouth?
Yeah.
So after that, the people who, quote, grew more outraged than distressed, they're just pissed at him. They're not scared of this entire thing. They're mad at him.
Right.
They proceed to stake the body through the heart, which caused a great amount of, quote unquote, completely fresh blood to flow through the ears and mouth of Peter Blagojevich.
This is wild stuff.
Finally, they burned his body, and it said that in case, some guy who was like writing the report of them doing all of this said that, now listen, in case these actions were found to be wrong, we should not be blamed for them because the villagers were, quote, beside themselves with fear, which is
we had to.
The kind of awesome, like, hedging of your bet.
Yeah.
You know, like, I know I did something crazy, but I legally can't be in trouble for this.
Exactly.
Because I was scared.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
Big asterisk.
So that's Peter Blagojevich. Here's the other strange case, Arnold Powell.
Peter Blagojevich is nuts.
Peter Blagojevich, I know. That's yes, it is.
What the hell was going on, actually? How are these people dying?
I'll tell you some of that.
Yeah.
You will get some answers to that. But you've got to imagine that, like, I'm sort of taking you through, like, imagine that this stuff has just occurred and now all you can do is try to make sense of it somehow. Okay. Peter Blagojevich died. Someone dies every day. You've heard legends of vampires and how this... And now people are also saying, Peter Blagojevich has visited me and tried to throttle me.
Yeah.
Well, it's perfectly logical given those clues to... And, you know, it's illogical to be like, somebody can rise from the grave. But if you're just trying to solve the problem and solve a cultural panic, let's dig up the body. Whoa, the body looks crazy, everybody.
Oh, there's new blood flowing through its ears.
Methinks it was Peter Blagojevich.
Man.
So let's get to Arnold Powell, again from Matthew Deegan. Shout out Matthew Deegan. Arnold Powell, this is just a few years later, he reportedly often mentioned himself that he had been plagued by a vampire at a location perhaps believed to have been modern-day Kosovo, but that he had cured himself by eating soil from the vampire's grave and smearing himself with its blood.
This guy just wanted to eat dirt and put on blood.
That's what I thought. This sounds like the feeble of
big
excuse of a dirt eater.
Yeah, absolutely.
Arnold Powell was a dirt eater.
Yep.
He loved to eat dirt.
Yeah, I know the scrambling to excuse dirt eating when I hear it.
Why am I covered in dirt?
To save myself from vampires, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
And the rouging of cheeks with blood.
Do you believe what I just said to you?
So what do you think about what I said?
In conclusion, did I dig myself out of the hole or what?
Yeah.
I love...
And if I did dig myself out of it, can I eat the dirt that I dug up?
Would you mind if I ate some more dirt?
Yeah.
I love all of the like prevention stuff around vampires where it's like, well, I wrapped myself in garlic and I never got bitten, so they probably hate garlic.
Totally.
It's like, well, or they're not real to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? No. So Arnold Powell ate the dirt. We know this. In 1725, he broke his neck in a fall from a hay wagon. Within 20 or 30 days after his death, 4 people complained that they had been plagued by him.
Oh.
That is scary. You don't hear that anymore, where someone dies and they're like, I keep being tormented by the dead guy.
Right.
These people all died shortly thereafter. 10 days later, and 40 days since his death, the villagers, advised by their administrative, leader, mayor, who had witnessed such events before, they opened his grave. They saw that the corpse was undecomposed with all the indications of vampirism. His veins were replete with fluid blood.
Oh. Yeah.
And that fresh blood had flowed from his eyes, nose, mouth, and ears. And that the shirt, his covering, and the coffin were completely bloody. His old nails on his hands and feet, along with the skin, had fallen off, and that new ones were growing. Furthermore, his body was red. His hair, nails, and beard had all grown. It was concluded that he was indeed a vampire. So they drove a stake through his heart, to which he reacted by frightful shriek as if he were alive.
No, he didn't.
He may have.
What?
He may have. I'll get to it. Groaning and bleeding, and then they burned the body. After that, they cut off his head and burned his whole body. They then disinterred his 4 supposed victims and did the same to them to prevent them from becoming vampires as well.
Man.
What do you got to do?
These are scary times.
This is Halloween Ends type stuff.
Yeah.
I know that Halloween Ends, and I'm not going to spoil the ending, but you can whatever. Like it's weird to think that they were like this would happen in 2024 or 3 or whatever year it was.
Right.
But it's like things like that have happened before. All of society's ills, vampire. What do? Cut off the head, burn the body, drive a stake through its heart.
Better safe than sorry,
Better
I guess.
safe than sorry. Do some big, public, crazy, grand gesture.
Yeah.
To, even if you don't believe in the vampire, signal to everybody, this
that
is
it's
done.
taken care of.
How could Arnold Pole possibly hurt us again?
Right.
We cut off his head and burn the body.
Man.
It's scary.
Time. Yeah, I mean, they think that they are doing the smartest and most logical thing by doing that.
Yes, exactly. It is very freaky deaky. Now, in a fun Tim Burton Sleepy Hollow type way, some of this starts to ramp down the vampire panic because of at least an attempt to have some sort of an investigation conducted. So, Empress Maria Theresa of Austria sent her personal physician, Gerard von Swieten, to investigate the claims of vampiric entities. Van Swieten concluded that vampires did not exist, and the Empress passed laws prohibiting the opening of graves and the desecration of bodies, thus ending the vampire panic.
Really ahead of their time.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I like that, where it's like, all right, this has gotten outrageous. We need an independent, impartial third party to come in and do their own investigation and say, hey, everyone, I think you've just been cutting the heads off dead people and we're burning their corpses.
Right.
Well, let's cut it out. It's worth pointing out that there have been American panics around vampires, especially because of tuberculosis or consumption, as it was believed to have been called. And so people believe that they were visited by, the corpses of dead loved ones who looked frightening. They looked like vampires. Most notably Mercy Brown of Rhode Island in 1892.
It's a biggie.
Yeah.
I think we did talk about that on the show.
I know, that rang a bell. I believe that's elsewhere in our feed. So what is going on?
Yeah.
Why did Arnold Powell scream when a stake was driven through his heart? What's with the blood in the face and the mouth and the bloating and the whole thing?
Right.
Again, a lot of it is a misunderstanding of science and decomposition.
Well, I'm not surprised if he made a noise, but he didn't scream.
So he may have screamed.
What
He may have screamed. So when you die, I guess your body builds up, it bloats from gases inside your body. When you then take a stake and puncture the body, it's literally like puncturing a balloon.
Right.
So all the gases get released.
Right.
Those gases flowing over your vocal cords.
That's what I'm saying, but that's not the same as you screaming, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's not the same as making
his body made a noise though.
His body, but it made a vocal. It made a vocal noise. It didn't just make a.
Yeah.
It made a like. Oh.
Right.
That's
so scary.
That's kind of screaming.
It's not that. Well, yes, it is.
He's not.
Yes.
Yes, he's not. There's no part of him that's alive and performing the act of screaming.
Right,
but the bizarre, you would never, at least, how crazy is it that you have vocal cords and all it takes is to run air over them by any means necessary and your body will sound like it is communicating.
Absolutely.
So for all intents and purposes, for the villagers, he did scream.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
He didn't scream, but to them, he absolutely screamed.
Of course.
And
that's terrifying.
That is horrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely horrifying. And again, a lot of the vampire trying to like let's figure out what corpse was the vampire. Because the body would bloat, people expected to open these coffins and see like a shriveling, decaying corpse. But they weren't aware of the fact that bodies decompose at different rates depending on like what time of year they're buried, what climate they're buried in, blah, 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 blah. And so if the body bloated, it would actually give the impression of having been well fed or something.
Right.
So
they look plump and well.
Exactly. So they were like, this dude's been eating good.
He's been eating good in the neighborhood. Neighborhood. So we have to do something about this.
Send for Applebee.
Yeah.
Applebee, get the vampire. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it, and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
You know? So here are some of the average, accepted ways to prevent a vampire. And some of them are horrific.
Oof.
This is the most gnarly, for sure. Commonly practiced in Europe was severing the tendons at the knee. Of the corpse, which is literally like a physics thing of like, well, he won't be able to walk.
Right.
So even if he comes back as a vampire, he's not climbing out of his grave.
He's dispatched.
That is horrifying.
Yeah.
That is absolutely horrifying to me. Or placing poppy seeds, millet, or sand on the ground of the grave.
So he trips.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Falls right back in the grave, slammed shut, done.
Right.
No, there was this weird belief that vampires are compelled to count fallen grains of rice and stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And that's like why the count is a thing.
That's exactly right. The Count from Sesame Street is obsessed with counting because of this ancient belief about vampires that they were compelled to count grains of rice or mustard seeds if they were spilled on the ground.
Right.
So you could literally distract a vampire by giving them stuff to count.
They can't help themselves, yeah.
That's why the Count on Sesame Street is like that. He's obsessed with numbers.
Yeah.
Because of
I love that.
What he is.
Yeah.
An undead being.
Yes.
How weird is it that on Sesame Street there
it's like
are
a biological imperative.
Monsters and a literal vampire.
No, I know.
And what the hell is the Grouch?
He's a monster.
Is he just a monster?
Yeah, he's just a monster who lives in the garbage can.
Well, then what are Bert and Ernie? Because humans live there too,
Yeah, I know. I don't know what they are.
I don't know. So, let's see. In the 16th century in Venice, a body was found in 2006 of a female corpse that had had a brick shoved into its mouth.
Oh my God.
And people believe that was some sort of a perhaps prevention of her coming back as a vampire.
Ugh.
And I've heard that before, where it's like you shove like a rock in the person's mouth or something. There are also those kinds of graves where you put a cage over the top, and people have believed that those are maybe to prevent a vampire from rising. More likely, it's to prevent grave robbers from getting to the grave. Grave robbers are problems for a number of reasons, one of which is also that people might see in a graveyard back then a disturbed grave and be like, someone was rising out.
Yeah, right.
Unaware that somebody was actually breaking in to steal all the jewels, Kristen. The jewels.
Jewels.
Weaknesses, garlic, crucifix, holy water, silver, right? But why? Crucifix in particular I thought was kind of interesting, sort of worth noting. That vampires, and I thought this was wonderfully funny phrasing, vampires were traditionally considered highly problematic within Christianity.
I would think so.
Problematic.
A real thorn in the side.
As their apparent immortal existence ran against the Christian belief that all true believers may look forward to an eternal existence.
Yeah.
As they were resurrected, but only at the end of time, when Jesus returns to judge the living and the dead.
Yeah, I can see that being trouble.
Living beyond death was an affront to Jesus, and therefore that's the Christianity, they're weak against a cross kind of thing.
Yeah.
They can't enter a house unless invited in. Stakes, again, people were literally using stakes to puncture the inflated, bloated bodies. And here's where we're going to conclude. Sunlight. This is a fun transitory phase for vampires around the late 1800s, early 1900s. Because for now, 150 years, something like that, vampires have been almost exclusively this largely folkloric thing. Books have been written about them, sure, but it all gets dialed up around 1897 when Bram Stoker's Dracula comes out. There had been vampire novels before Bram Stoker's Dracula, but this is the one that there's this belief about pop culture and stuff that it's not enough to just make something good. You also have this other uncontrollable thing of release it at the right time.
Yeah.
When there's really an appetite for this kind of thing. And it was scary and it was romantic and it just clicked.
It really hit.
And one of the things that Bram Stoker put into that book was the notion that Dracula could transform into a bat, which had not been part of the folklore. But after Bram Stoker's Dracula, that's an agreed upon just general trait of the vampire.
Right.
And especially with the Universal Monsters movies, like Bela Lugosi turned into a vampire, boom. So that's just a fact now.
Yeah,
they can
now
transform.
It's just definitive.
And similarly, 1922's Nosferatu introduced the notion that a vampire can be killed by sunlight. Oh. Everyone made fun of Twilight for having, Robert Pattinson
go all sparkly.
I don't know about the sparkle thing, but for a long time, it was vampires are more active at night, but not killed by sunlight. They're just less active.
Yeah.
Maybe they just sleep by day. They're nocturnal. That's why we think
cats.
And like bats. That's what's scary.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until Nosferatu that you could defeat them with sunlight, which is interesting.
But it was just so good, and people were so into it that they were like, "That's what vampires are now."
Yes, and that's one of the things that I love about the stuff that we research on the show is I love it when it's all of this is just people telling stories to each other.
Yeah, and
then going
some stuff sticks.
Oh, I invented something new and people liked it, so they're telling it that way now.
Yeah, right.
I love that.
Now, what about the vampire that John Travolta played on SNL? How do you think that affected the way that we see vampires? Do you remember that?
What? No, I don't.
Remember that?
Sorry, I'm not 70. When is the last time John Travolta hosted SNL?
It was a long time ago. I don't know.
Were you watching it live?
Yes.
Grandma?
I honestly barely remember it. I don't know. He was a vampire who turned into a bat.
80s? Is this
90s.
Welcome Back Kotter era?
No. 90s.
Blah, Mr. Kotter, blah. Was it like that?
No, it was 90s. I don't know. He turns into a bat and I don't know. He's up to stuff.
Oh, you don't even know anything about it?
Not really. I was hoping that you did.
Why'd you say this to me?
I thought that you would know.
You look like a real horse's ass.
I do. I don't know. It's something to do with sex or something.
Oh.
He turns into a bat and he's going around being gross or something.
I'm good.
Yeah. No, I thought that you could play off of it and then I could,
No,
my hands would be clean.
I was probably watching Fridays that night. So, anyway. I want to conclude with the following, because I do love that, now we're in an era where folklore is so readily available and like the entire history of something is available. But who's to say that somebody couldn't invent another trait of the vampire that would become
that's true.
a stock detail going forward the next few hundred years?
Totally.
So there's a remake of Nosferatu from Robert Eggers, Bill Skarsgård, Willem Dafoe, Lily Rose Depp, coming out this year. And just like how Nosferatu 1922 introduced the sunlight thing, who's to say they won't create some bizarre other trait that then we'll all be like, yeah, that's what a vampire is.
Yeah.
A vampire's that kind of thing. He can swallow a boat.
Right.
You know,
Right.
I don't know what they do in that movie. No one's seen it yet.
Yeah.
But I love
Here's
that.
hoping.
I love that kind of thing. I love the idea of a constantly evolving folklore. But I will say, and I wish that I had known, but back in the 1800s, there were these things called penny dreadfuls. They were just like cheap little books that you could buy purely for entertainment. And there was a book published, it was very popular at the time, called Varney the Vampire. Oh, if only I knew what sort of things were happening to Varney the Vampire and like what kind of cool stuff he probably invented, or like how awesome that book probably was. Varney the Vampire. That sounds like shit. I'm sorry.
You feel left out.
Varney the Vampire.
Doesn't sound great.
That sounds like crap.
Yeah, it totally sounds like crap.
Anyway, we may never know.
How unfortunate for us.
Sorry to this vampire.
Yeah, sorry to this vampire.
Varney the Vampire. I'll never know who you are.
Oh, what a heartbreak. Well, we will learn more about who the Highgate Vampire is, kind of. More about the people who were hunting down the Highgate Vampire.
Okay.
After we make sure you know about patreon.com/GTTUpod. This is the home of our second weekly podcast, The Netherworld Dispatch, which comes out every Monday. You could be starting and ending your week with us. What
Hell
a
yeah.
dream.
Oh my God. The greatest way to begin and end a week.
Oh, totally. So people who are members of our demon tier get every episode of the Netherworld Dispatch. And then we have other tiers that you can check out to get episodes every other week or once a month. You can see what works for you over there. We also have a Discord that you can get access to. We also, very importantly, have ad-free episodes of this very show when you sign up for our Discord. It's awesome. It's a great time. We have movie commentaries, all kinds of crap. So you should go check it out.
I want to do something kind of fun too.
Yeah.
Because also in our ecosystem, we've got this fun thing. We've got a P.O. box. And we literally just got a great big piece of mail that I want to open on the show here. If you're interested in sending things to us, you can mail them to Guide to the Unknown, 900 Easton Ave, Suite 26, Box 166, Somerset, New Jersey, 08873. And this comes to us from Julie.
Yeah.
I've been in communication with Julie. I know what is in this box, but I have not seen it yet, and I'm very excited about it. And Julie has sent us other things in the past.
I know. I'm very excited to see it. Julie is awesome. Julie has previously sent a quilt for baby Zoe.
That's right.
She sent me a quilt, which is so sweet. She's an amazing quilter.
So talented.
Like unreal. And this is a quilt for Will's upcoming baby boy.
Baby boy. Let's take a look. All right. I am officially, everybody, into the box. I am looking. There is a card and a wrapped gift. Oh, this is very sweet. I will open the card with Allie.
Yep.
FYI. And I am now removing a box that is wonderfully wrapped
This is so sweet.
with baby animal pattern. Let's see. And let's find out what is inside this box.
It's so adorable. I
know.
love my quilt. It's on the couch in the living room. We use it all the time. And it seemed like Julie had prescient knowledge because she did ask me what my favorite color was, and I said green. And she basically matched the quilt to my hallway and living room, and I love it so much.
Here we go.
Okay.
I am now holding the quilt and I am opening it.
Oh my God.
Beautiful. Oh, it's beautiful. Yep. Look at that.
This is so nice.
For baby brother.
Oh, wow. I love these colors.
We were in communication about colors, and they are absolutely beautiful.
I love these colors.
Patterned with butterflies. We're going for like a Museum of Natural History vibe in baby brother's room.
Oh, I love that.
I know. It felt like an interesting theme that wasn't the sort of like, trucks and baseballs and beautiful. Julie, thank you. Thank you. I absolutely love it, and I'll be in communication.
Oh my God. The quilt is kind of like, the color scheme is kind of like a pale lime-ish, like key lime pie green, and then cream color, and then burgundy squares that are just patterned out in a really unique way. And then the actual like stitching of the quilt is in this like awesome, almost like leaf-like pattern.
Oh, you're right.
And then it's got a border of these butterflies. It is gorgeous.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Holy moly.
I'm gonna wrap a baby in this.
Yeah, you are.
And not long from now, by the way.
I
Not long
know.
at all. Thank you, Julie. Thank you.
That is stunning.
And now I'm not sure if this is a coincidence or not.
Mm-hmm.
I have a review for us from Julie.
Oh.
I don't know if it's the same Julie. It says, love these two. I've been listening to Guide to the Unknown for 5 years and never tire of Kristen and William. Their sibling banter and side tangents are so fun and make me feel like I'm hanging out with the two of them. Keep it up. 5 stars.
That's so nice. Thank you so much, Julie.
No signs of stopping.
Whether it's the same Julie or another Julie, thank you so much. That's so sweet.
A great day for Julie's.
Oh, yeah. A huge day for Julie's.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much to all of our patrons. Thank you to everybody who leaves us a review or sends an episode to their friends. You are all fully awesome.
One of the greatest communities.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Absolutely. So there is something else that is coming out. Actually, if you're listening the day that this episode drops, it is out and available for you right now.
Liminal, a new paranormal docuseries that premieres today on YouTube.
Liminal seeks to answer the question, why do queer and trans people gravitate toward the paranormal? The 10-episode first season combines interviews, paranormal investigations, and help from practitioners of the strange to paint a picture of magic, trans experience, and the interesting history of their overlap in the American South.
The series follows non-binary investigator Dash, their co-host Rosa, and practicing witch Rockette, and features interviews and paranormal investigations with queer and trans people living and practicing various types of magic in the South.
So Dash sent us the first episode, and it has really cool firsthand stories in it of weird experiences combined with good old-fashioned ghost hunting. There's like an Estes method session, a Gansfield experiment. I think listeners will be into it. And also in the course of emailing back and forth with Dash, I got the inside scoop that there's an upcoming episode with Ray Weiss from Twin Peaks.
Oh.
Where they head out for a paranormal investigation with him, and he brought his own ghost hunting equipment.
Stop it.
Yeah, so like he's ready to go.
That's cool.
He's
Ready at a moment's notice.
Yeah, he's in this world.
Oh, I hope he dances around and stuff.
Ooh, me too.
So go check it out. The first episode is out today as this episode drops, and it is feature length. Perfect for a Friday night watch. So go to liminaltv.com, and we're also going to have links in the show notes. Mm-hmm. Go check it out, everybody.
Yeah.
All right. More about vampires, the Highgate Vampire in particular, after this commercial break.
All right, so the Highgate Vampire. This is an absolutely wild story. I've never heard of it before. I've heard Highgate nor hair of it.
Okay.
And so thank you to user named Jezebeth in our chat on YouTube last week for suggesting it, because it is so friggin' cool. It is a story of pettiness between paranormal investigators. And I love this sort of thing.
Okay. Pettiness.
Yeah, a little bit of a rivalry.
Oh, I'm excited.
It's more that than an actual vampire, really.
Excellent.
It's great.
Excellent.
Okay, so in March 1969, the British Psychic and Occult Society started getting reports about a creepy, tall black figure wandering around London's Highgate Cemetery. So that's where the name comes, obviously. And most of the stories were just local gossip. But soon the investigators who were looking into it found a guy who said he had a close encounter with one of these figures, and they started dubbing it the Highgate Vampire when they were talking about it amongst themselves and going out to the cemetery to look into it. The guy who said that he saw this thing said that he felt hypnotized by something lurking in the shadows, and then when he was trying to leave the cemetery, he got like all turned around and lost. He was like totally disoriented by whatever this thing was that he encountered. And a part of like vampire stories and like the lore around them is that they can kind of sometimes perform some sort of like telepathy on you and can control your mind.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
yeah, I didn't really get into that, but
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Like how Dracula is said to be able to sort of like bewitch people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe that was kind of at play here. So as that dude stumbled around in the dark in the cemetery trying to get the hell out of there, he started sensing something behind him again. And when he spun around, he saw this tall black figure, but then it vanished right away. Then, shortly after that, two teenage girls were walking home not far away from the cemetery, and they said that they saw dead people rising from their graves.
Oh, God.
So all kinds of activity is happening here. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Then an elderly lady said that she got freaked out by, again, a tall, dark man, whatever that means, with scary eyes while walking her dog inside the cemetery gates. Then the weirdest thing, like the weirdest part of this and most provable thing started happening. Foxes in the area started dropping dead.
Oh.
There just started to be dead foxes all over the place in and around the cemetery. And that's something that you can't dispute. They are actually there. So this started to get picked up by local papers. And the paper that covered it the most was the Hampstead and Highgate Express, which ran an article that had kind of an awesome title, Why Do the Foxes Die?
Ooh. Very artful.
Yeah, I know. Why do they? It sounds almost philosophical, but it is literal.
Well, it's like a Silence of the Lambs type thing, where it's like it's related to the crux of the matter.
Yeah.
And but separate. It's very artful. Why do the foxes die? Well, it could be because of a goddamn vampire.
Right, totally. It is very Silence of the Lambs. You're right.
Yeah.
So the article supported the idea that this vampire stalking the cemetery was killing the foxes, that these things were related. But this was poo-pooed by David Tarrant, who was from the British, I started abbreviating because it was a long name, the British Psychic and Occult Society. I abbreviated it. They probably don't. I started abbreviating it to BPOS. So we're just going to refer to it this way.
Okay.
So this guy is like, I don't know if that is necessarily true. We can't say that. This person, David Tarrant. Mm-hmm. But he didn't rule out the possibility that the animals were being killed by groups entering this cemetery to perform satanic rituals. So he has somewhat of a grounded approach to these reports of things happening in the cemetery. He is not necessarily going to go so far as to say, yeah, there's definitely a vampire in the cemetery just because people are seeing that, and that the vampire is responsible for foxes. However, he is like, there may be like people performing satanic acts in the cemetery. Maybe that is stirring up some sort of activity, and maybe they are performing rituals. So it's kind of like a weird,
it's very weird,
like halfway there sort of thinking about this kind of thing.
Yeah, I could definitely see an argument of like, maybe it's just people who believe in Satan
right.
who are killing the foxes thinking that's part of their ritual.
That's what he's saying, but he is also open to the idea
right.
that there is paranormal activity as well.
Right.
But he's more on the side of the foxes are probably the satanic people coming in doing ritual, but there may also be a vampire in there.
Yeah, it's just so weird. It's like saying, I don't think there's a ghost. What are you, stupid? I think it's a demon.
Right.
You know?
Kind of. So kind of spurred on by all of the reported activity in the cemetery, because it's getting like a lot of attention now that this is such a thing. Now it's getting more and more media attention. Farrant and that society began to conduct a private investigation just themselves into what was going on at Highgate Cemetery. And Farrant then wrote in to the Hampstead and Highgate Express, that newspaper, with an update. And he also appeared on TV to talk about it. He concluded, or the group concluded, that there was indeed satanic activity going on there. Plus, his team, while doing their research, had seen an apparition.
Oh.
So they have seen real life people doing stuff, and they've also seen a ghost.
Right.
So again, it's both. Farrant said later that he was careful not to use the word vampire when he was sharing this information, because he didn't want to sensationalize the events. And I decided not to do BPOS as my abbreviation. I'll just say society.
Bepose.
The Bepose. He didn't want to sensationalize the research that the society was doing, but a rival figure soon emerged who had no such reservations. Sean Manchester was a self-proclaimed vampire hunter, exorcist, and bishop of the Old Catholic Church. I don't know what this means.
This is great.
But apparently it's, I don't know, something weird.
He's here.
He's here.
He's the Zach Bagans of his day.
Yes.
And he's here.
This guy is here to ruffle some feathers, peacock around, two sort of feather metaphors I'm using.
I'm here now.
Here I am.
Behold me.
I put a note in our Google Doc to just talk about this guy and perhaps David Farrant on their own.
Oh, hell yeah.
Because in the course of this, I could have talked about Sean Manchester himself much more, because there are TV interviews with him where it's like him and a studio audience and people asking him questions and him kind of dressed vampire-ish answering them.
Excellent.
This is my kind of guy.
Okay.
But
then.
I wanted to stick to Highgate Vampire sort of material. But
I'm
here's what's going on. This guy enters the scene. He gets into the mix and he goes on TV stating that the Highgate Vampire was a very old school Bram Stoker type of baddie. So he's saying, yeah, there is a vampire who is stalking the cemetery. He is this kind of like blood drinking sort of figure. He's saying that he's all of these things that you think of a vampire as being. He's not talking about an apparition and stuff. I mean, maybe both, but he's talking about a tangible vampire that is about. He is like those guys from the real vampire hunters.
He's insisting there is actually a Bela Lugosi man walking around.
Correct.
Okay.
And he said that he was going to hunt him down and dispatch him.
Oh my God.
But not only
1969 this shit's going on?
Yes.
That's outrageous.
Yes.
Do you know that somebody who is alive in 1969 easily could have been alive for the publishing of Bram Stoker's Dracula? 1897 to 1969. All you have to be is like in your, mid to, let's say you're 80 years old. You could have picked up the book and maybe read it.
Yeah, you're right. Now, these fellows were younger. They looked like they're probably 30s, I think.
All I mean to say is that the idea of a vampire, of a Bela Lugosi man, is not even that old when this is happening. Yeah.
No.
All right.
I know. It's incredible. So he's on TV saying there is an actual vampire about. These are real things. And I'm going to hunt it down and I'm going to kill it.
That's crazy. He's like the most elite hunter in the world.
But he goes a step further and he says that he is going to be joined by David Farrant, that guy from the Society, whose media tour had preceded Sean Manchester. So he's the more famous guy who had been out and about talking about the Highgate Vampire and all these things in the Highgate Cemetery. So then Sean Manchester comes out on the scene. He's talking his jive about the Highgate Cemetery, saying there is in fact a vampire. And by the way, I'm cool with this guy, you guys all know.
Right.
David Farrant and I, we're a team.
We're best friends.
And we're going to do this together. But this is not a thing that David Farrant had signed off on at all.
Dynamite.
He's like, what are you talking about? I didn't say that. I don't agree with your idea of what this vampire is.
That there's a Dracula.
No.
Right.
It is not a thing.
Dynamite.
So like he is disavowing this whole deal. It's not his gig. But now the genie is out of the bottle because Sean Manchester went on TV and said this. So the crowd went wild, so to speak. The day after that interview, hundreds of people with wooden stakes and shovels converged on Highgate Cemetery for a vampire hunt.
This is
Excuse me.
That's okay. You all right? Mm-hmm. I'd like to confirm that this is also stupid and unnecessary. Everything you told me about the Highgate Vampire is that he confused a few people, and then foxes died.
Yes.
This Dracula didn't even do anything.
No, nobody has been. Foxes have been hurt somehow.
Listen, I'm not happy when foxes die.
Of
all
course.
right. Famously, I am a friend to the fox.
Of course, everybody knows that about you. But no, there's been no danger that we are fighting against.
We are just creating the boogeyman.
It seems like I'm upsetting someone in the ether. Perhaps a vampire.
Your vocal cords are being...
Sean Manchester. Yeah, I'm being choked.
Can you get any gas to run over those vocal cords? So instead of coughing, you tell us the goddamn story, you sicko. No, take your time. Take your time. Take a full drink. We're going to take a whole bio break right now, everybody. All right?
I don't know what's going on.
Let's see what's happening to Kristen. Look at her. Look at what she's going through. You didn't drink peppermint oil, did you?
No.
Okay.
No, it's got a tickle.
Well, then why aren't you laughing?
Okay. All right. It's like a fuzzy went in my throat or something.
You okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
Right.
I think it's gone. Okay. Let me just see where I ended.
Well, we were just saying that I'm a friend of the Fox.
Of course.
And that there was really nothing that was happening.
Right.
Like no human threat was genuinely posed.
Right. So yeah, this is all just like super sensationalistic.
Yeah.
It honestly probably started out as just kind of like a fun human interest story. They're talking to David Farrant for the most part, who's being like somewhat measured. He's kind of like a kooky guy. I watched a little bit of news stuff that he was on. They show him hopping over a fence at Highgate Cemetery for some reason. I don't know, he's not going in the front door.
Like a gymnast? Like, did he do it really well?
They didn't show it, honestly. It wasn't that close up, and it was like an old grainy footage sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
But like, he kind of comes over. He looks sort of hippie-ish. He was wearing like, he's wearing like a cross.
Yeah.
He, I don't know. He wasn't like that big a deal. He's saying, we're going to hold some seances. We're going to see what's going on here. But then Sean Manchester comes on the scene. So it's probably like a fun little news story. Sean Manchester comes on the scene. He says, there's an actual vampire here. I'm going to hunt it down and kill it. Then people see that and they're like, okay, we're all going to do it.
This is awesome.
It's crazy. So then they all go to the cemetery, like I said, with wooden stakes and shovels. The police go, because this is like a scene. People are breaking through police barricades to get into the cemetery because they're like, we need to take care of this. This is now a community safety issue that we're
all on neighborhood watch.
Go nuts.
I'm going to hit him with a shovel. How'd you like a shovel head? Doink.
What are they doing with the shovel?
I know. What's that supposed to do?
I know. It's so crazy. But so they're breaking through. But then some people would break through and then go back and they're like, whoa, actually, this is too much for me. It's too scary. Because they get into the cemetery and they see frightening visions once they get inside.
Hell yeah.
So, of course, the police came and then it becomes a news story. So now people from newspapers are coming and they're getting quotes from some of these people. So a frightened attendee named Anthony Robinson said, quote, I walked past the place and I heard a high-pitched noise. Then I saw something gray moving slowly across the road. It terrified me. I've never believed in anything like this, and now I'm sure there's something evil lurking in the Highgate. So, Farrant, who I don't think was there, that's the guy who, the original guy, I don't think was there. It wasn't totally clear to me. But he thought that this was just mass hysteria. He was like, what the hell is this? Now, he wasn't beyond dramatics himself. It's not like this is a story of like, oh, this super duper measured dude who's like debunking everything. And then this guy who's so hysterical.
Skeptic and believer.
It's not quite that, but it is. There's shades of it. Like in a TV interview before Merchant showed up and like stirred the pot so much, he's like Farrant himself did say he was, quote, prepared to take any means necessary, unquote, to get rid of whatever entity was in the cemetery. But he was certainly a little bit more measured and chilled. And over the course of the next few months, things start to die down. Like nothing is really happening because nothing really happened that crazily in the first place. Like people were in the cemetery. They saw visions and apparitions. Like that is a thing, and that's really cool in itself. But there was nothing that warranted people storming the cemetery with stakes and things like that. You know what I mean? And so when there was nothing that I think matched that sort of energy, people lost interest and the story starts to kind of die down. Until this is so nuts. So two schoolgirls, a couple months later, were walking through the cemetery and came across the 100-year-old corpse of a woman. And this, when you were talking in the beginning, it reminded me of this. They came across the 100-year-old corpse of a woman who had been dragged out of her tomb, decapitated, and stabbed through the heart with a wooden stake.
Oh, God.
Like, this is true. And then this led to a police investigation, obviously, which went nowhere. An uptick in vampire sightings, and that included one where a woman said that, quote, a pallid figure wearing a black cloak threw her to the ground.
Oh.
So just like, it's just interesting to me and obvious how these stories beget stories.
Yes.
Like one person hears something or experiences something, and then another person does, because you start to look for it and you're in more of that kind of mood. Or also, to be more on the like paranormal side of it, maybe there is a little bit of a thinning of the veil sort of effect. Like maybe you are looking for it more, so you are able to see it a little bit more.
I know. I understand the devil's advocate of it all,
Yeah.
but it feels far more likely to me the former, right?
Yes.
There's this heightened societal belief in a thing. It creates panic in people. People are not always the most reliable witnesses anyway. And when you're scared, that's when you have a tendency to see something that's going to scare you.
Yeah.
Right? Panic. Just genuine. The weird thing is, and I wonder how immune you can possibly be to this kind of thing. Like, we're around Highgate Cemetery in 1969. Are we grabbing our shovel and whittling a stake and going out?
Well, I think that's partially just a personality thing. I would say no.
Right.
That's
Do
like
we know
not-
anybody who is?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
So but why do I think that? Right? Like people today certainly make all kinds of, groupthink decisions.
They definitely do, but if you're saying, do we know anybody? I think it's just like our circle of people aren't really like out doing stuff like
I
that.
know. But I just wonder,
I think people would.
is it my own hubris to be like, I would have been above it, or would I have not just been right there in the mix or turned a blind eye to it? Who knows? You know what I mean?
I think it's not impossible that I would have been, well, I think I would have been interested in it. I'd be following the story and everything. But I certainly wouldn't be out there with a stake.
Yeah, but been like, I'm staying inside.
Of course, but that's just because I stay inside anyway.
I'm watching the Smothers Brothers tonight. It's weird that this is happening in 1969. It's very strange that this is an arguably fairly contemporary story.
I
1969.
believe it.
1969, by the way, is the year when Austin Powers got frozen.
Oh my God.
And for 30 years was in stasis until he was unthawed.
What's the connection? What does it mean?
I don't know. I'll do some research on it. I'll get back to you after I watch a few movies.
What could have happened if we sent him back in Austin Powers 2? You know what I mean?
They do send him back in Austin Powers too.
But to this place and at
to
this
Highgate
time.
specifically?
Yeah.
I'd be afraid of that
I think
vampire taking his
whole
mojo.
thing, yeah. Oh, I don't know. I think his mojo could have overpowered the vampire.
You think so? Well, Bela Lugosi was a fairly romantic figure. Maybe they would have had like some sort of a mojo off.
That is true.
You know?
That is true. So this whole thing, like, it all felt pretty newly aggressive. All of a sudden, there's like all this new activity. There is a literal body that has been decapitated
That's
and
crazy.
staked.
Yeah.
So that British Paranormal and Occult Society decided to conduct a seance at the cemetery to get any information of use. Farrant later wrote, quote, "If successful, a rite of exorcism could then be performed to banish the entity from the earthly plane." And so they went into the cemetery on August 17th, 1970, with this mission in mind. They're going to figure this out once and for all. They're going to conduct a seance and see what they can do. So Farrant and the members of the society went into the cemetery and headed straight to the area of that very first sighting that we talked about in the beginning, right to the origins. They drew out a big circle on the ground, put down protective symbols, salt, and holy water. And then they set up another circle with candles and incense where they thought the demon, if there was one, was likely to show up. But right as they began their seance, they heard voices in the distance.
Oh.
The coppers.
Oh my God.
So they had to hurry to pack up all their stuff and like book it out of there because they weren't supposed to be in there. But Farrant didn't make it in time and he got caught.
Oh no, he got snatched?
Yeah.
What were you doing in there, boyo?
That's Ireland.
What, where were we?
England.
I came over from the Emerald Isle to work me job.
That's right. That's right. So from there, because that ended up being kind of like a big nothing, they weren't able to conduct their seance, which would let them know whether they could perform an exorcism or not. They were stymied.
Okay.
Belief in the vampire of Highgate Cemetery kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. You know, stories would come up. Nothing really big happened again.
Are we
then
in an
it would sort
ebb
of
or a
go
flow
away.
state at the moment?
Well, okay. So I think we're in an ebb because there was a Discovery Channel special called, like, what is it called? I actually didn't watch it. It was like the Highgate Vampire Ghost or something like that.
Yeah.
It had like a 1-star rating.
Hell yeah.
I would like to watch it still, honestly, but I was like,
Tight.
I just want to talk about this.
Yeah.
It seemed like people weren't into it, so it feels like perhaps an ebb. Unclear, but even whether it was an ebb or a flow, Farrant and Manchester maintained a rivalry for all of their lives until Farrant passed away in 2019.
Oh, wow.
It ended up being called off, but a few years after this major Highgate Vampire mania, in 1973, they were set to have a magical duel to see who ruled the most once and for all, I guess.
What?
I don't know.
How do you do that?
I don't know, but it was called off. So we'll never know.
Sounds like
It
sounds like two children being like, I hit you with my magic. No, I blocked it. You can't block it. I did. I blocked it.
I know. So like I
Ooh,
said,
I'd like to see that.
Like I said, this is a little bit of a
Sectum
cliffhanger.
Sempra.
yeah. It's a little bit of a cliffhanger because I would love to look into these dudes for a future episode. I would love to learn exactly what their magical duel was meant to entail.
Yeah.
But that is the story of the Highgate Vampire.
Dynamite. I love that. I love that. But it is weird and not surprisingly weird, but it is weird how it can be such a fever pitch thing and then everyone just like, yeah,
nothing has happened.
Move
so,
on.
You know.
I'll go back to work.
Yeah.
I guess. Like I'll just stop thinking about this, even though I ran out of my house with a steak.
I know.
I carved a steak. You can't just go buy a steak.
I carved a steak for this.
I carved a goddamn steak for this.
I wonder if there was anybody outside the cemetery with like a bunch of steaks at a stall, the way that like when you go to the fireworks, they have those stalls with those like light up necklaces.
Yeah, hell, I bet there were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe they had vendors.
Yeah, glowing LED steak.
Yeah.
Get him here.
That's awesome.
And then one poor Dracula running around in there.
Poor bastard.
Shame.
Well, is it a poor Dracula or is he happy as a clam because he got away with it? He's probably still out there today.
He was probably perched above like a gargoyle.
Just watching.
Just watching.
These fools.
They're going mad. And I'm reaping all the benefits.
Just going behind a tomb.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Highgate Vampire.
Vampire and vampires in general.
We did it.
I
was enchanted by this.
I know.
And the bizarre revelation that we had never done it.
I know.
What a thrill. And there's still, I mean, so much.
I would love to go back to this bloody well.
Yes, I very much. I think the vampire is more of a platform of stuff than just being able to cover the vampire and call it a day. It seems like there are a lot of offshoots and like a family tree of vampires. I know.
I'd like to know what's going on with that movie. I'm not sure which one it is, where Gary Oldman is a vampire and he's all powdery and white.
Oh, Dracula, Kristen.
Is it just Dracula?
It's Dracula.
Oh, okay.
It's Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Okay. Well, you know, there's like the face of the vampire, the air of the vampire.
Dracula 2000.
Dracula 2000.
Which I remember being a fan of. I don't know if you recall this.
I don't know.
Watched it many times.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have said that I'm like a fan of vampires, but certainly the bizarre
kind of am. I don't know. I'm interested.
The grotesque exhuming of bodies and all that stuff, like the fact that it is rooted in actual like sort of cultural panics and events, that has heightened it for me again from just being like, cool, vampire or whatever. Mm-hmm. I also know there was that movie, The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which came out in the last couple of years, which I think people said they liked. I didn't see it.
I didn't want to see it. It didn't look good to me.
And the new Nosferatu movie coming in the future. And obviously Universal keeps trying to make their Universal, monsters happen.
I wish they would.
I know. I wish they would find the right way. I may or may not be doing some vampire myself. Wait, doing some vampire? Why did I phrase it that way? I am directing something that that a vampire character is involved in, and it should be coming out around Halloween this year.
Now. Yeah.
But I'll have more announcements about that as we get closer. But I'm actually going to be directing somebody who I didn't realize I was casting as a vampire for this like audio thing. And the person that I cast as a vampire, when I was trying to schedule, they were like, well, I'm in, Europe. I'm in like Central Europe. I was like, oh my God, no wonder you're such a good Dracula.
You're
like
perfect.
You're not doing an accent.
Oh, amazing.
Or at least I don't think so. I haven't worked with them yet, but they are unbelievable. So I've got vampire stuff coming down the pike.
Yeah.
But this was fun.
Vampire stuff coming out of your ears. Like so much blood.
Oh my God. All this blood in my ears.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to go. I got to go sop it up. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We
Yep.
greatly appreciate you being here.
Yes.
Follow at GTTUpod on all social media. We post when we're going live. We post when we have new shows coming out. And sometimes we post fun things here and there. Go check out Patreon. It's patreon.com/GTTUpod. Find a tier that fits. Our most recent episode was actually a review of Longlegs.
Yes.
Which you can really hear Kristen and I get into some good debate over there. It was just
Spirited.
very spirited. It was
Yeah.
very fun.
Yeah, it
Great
was.
conversation, at least. And we'll see you next week for some other sort of thing that we'll talk about.
Who knows?
I don't know what yet.
Yeah.
Don't ask me. Until that time comes, though, we must travel.
Back to the netherworld go we. Flap, 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 flap. Those are my bat wings.
Hello.
Hmm.
Can I come inside?
No.
It's funny to be like, they can't come in unless you invite them in. Like, easy peasy.
Yeah, totally.
Just don't do it.
Yeah, not really a big deal. Just stay inside.
Pretty easy
And then you're fine.
Pretty easy to avoid a vampire.
Yeah.
I don't know what all the fuss was about.
Yeah, I know. Much ado about nothing.